One quiet evening in late summer, Sherlock Holmes and I were sitting together at Baker Street. The lamps were lit, the air outside was warm, and Holmes was unusually thoughtful. He had been silent for some time when he suddenly said, "You have never heard me speak of my family, Watson." "Hardly ever," I admitted. "Well," said he, smiling faintly, "I am not the only one in the family with brains. My brother Mycroft is far more clever than I am." I laughed. "Surely not." Holmes leaned back. "He is. Observation, reasoning, deduction. He has them all in a higher degree. But he lacks energy. He will never follow up his ideas. That's why I make my living, and he never stirs from his armchair." A few minutes later, he surprised me by saying, "Would you like to meet him?" "Indeed I would," I said eagerly. We took a cab to a large quiet building in Pall Mall. Inside was a sort of private club known as the Diogenes Club, where silence was golden and no one spoke unless absolutely necessary. In a corner sat a tall, heavy man with a broad face, pale eyes, and an expression of deep calm. "Mycroft," said Sherlock, "this is my friend Dr. Watson." Mycroft smiled politely. "I hear of you constantly, Doctor." It was strange to see two men so alike, each sharp-eyed, each cool and composed. They spoke little, but each seemed to understand the other instantly. After a while Mycroft said, "You have come at a fortunate time. A most curious problem has just been brought to me by a friend, Mr. Melas, a Greek interpreter. You may find it of interest, Sherlock." Holmes's eyes lit up. "Tell us everything." Mr. Melas was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and an intelligent face. He earned his living translating for foreigners who came to London and needed help with the language. He began his story quietly, but with growing excitement. "2 nights ago," he said, "I was at home when a strange man called, a tall fellow with a heavy moustache and a nervous air. He said his name was Mr. Latimer, and that he needed my services at once. A Greek friend of his, he explained, was in great distress and could not speak English. He offered me a generous fee and begged me to come with him immediately. I agreed, and he led me to a waiting carriage outside. To my surprise, the windows were covered by blinds. As soon as I stepped in, he shut the door and locked it." "Locked it?" repeated Holmes. "Yes. I protested, but he said it was a precaution because his friend's business was private. The carriage drove for at least an hour through dark streets. I could tell we were going toward the suburbs, but I could not see where. When at last we stopped, he hurried me into a large house. Inside, another man was waiting, bigger, darker, and rougher than Latimer. He called himself Cratides. No, pardon me. That was the name of the Greek gentleman they brought in afterward. This other man, the dark one, was clearly in charge. He told me sternly, 'You are to ask exactly what we tell you, and translate exactly what he says in reply. Nothing more.'" Melas paused to catch his breath. "Then they brought in the Greek?" The man they brought in was a pitiful sight, thin, pale, and weak, with his face covered in bruises and his mouth gagged with sticking plaster. His hands were bound. They placed him in a chair opposite me. Latimer tore off the plaster so he could speak. The dark man leaned toward me. "Ask him," he said, "whether he will sign the paper we have prepared." I spoke in Greek. "Sir, you are in danger. What is this about?" He looked at me with terrified eyes and whispered, "Tell them I refuse." When I translated that answer, the dark man's face grew fierce. "Tell him that we will use force if he will not obey." I obeyed. but I also managed to slip in a few words in Greek that they could not understand. "Who are you? Where are we?" He answered quickly. "I am Paul Cratides from Athens. They are forcing me to sign away my sister's fortune." Before I could ask more, the dark man shouted for silence. The prisoner was dragged from the room, gagged again, and taken away. After that, Latimer forced me back into the carriage and drove me home by a long, winding route. He warned me not to speak of what I had seen, but I came straight to Mycroft the next day. Sherlock Holmes had listened with eyes half closed. When Melas finished, he sprang to his feet. "Watson, we must act at once. This poor fellow Cratides may be dead by now." Mycroft nodded. "I have already informed the police, but they are slow. You may do better." Holmes turned to Melas. "Do you remember anything of the route? Any sound or smell? Anything at all?" Melas thought for a moment. "The road was rough, like gravel. I heard a train once, not far away, and smelled something. Paint or varnish, perhaps. The house itself had thick curtains and iron bars on the windows." "That's enough to start with," said Holmes. "Come, Watson." We spent the entire evening travelling by cab and train through the outer districts of London, looking for houses that fit the description. It was near midnight when Holmes suddenly gripped my arm. "Listen! Do you hear that?" In the distance, a train whistled, and nearby, faintly, came the smell of fresh paint. We were near Beckenham, a quiet suburb. Holmes pointed to a large house standing apart from the others, its windows dark, its garden overgrown. "That must be it," he whispered. We crept up the path and found the door locked, but a light shone through a crack in the shutters. Holmes peered in. Inside, 2 men were sitting at a table, Latimer and his dark companion. A third figure lay motionless on a couch. Holmes's jaw tightened. "We're too late," he murmured. He struck the door with his shoulder, and it burst open. The 2 villains sprang up in alarm, but before they could escape, we rushed in with the police who had followed close behind. The scene inside was dreadful. On the couch lay Mr. Melas, pale and unconscious, a handkerchief tied tightly over his mouth. Beside him lay the Greek, Paul Cratides, dead. Holmes tore away the gag from Melas's mouth, and the doctor revived him with brandy. When he could speak, Melas gasped. "They shut us up together and lit a charcoal brazier. The fumes—" Holmes nodded grimly. "They meant to suffocate you both, but why spare you at all?" "I think they fled before the work was done," Melas whispered. Indeed, the window at the back was open, and footprints led into the garden. Latimer and his companion had escaped. The newspapers were full of the story next day. The police searched every port and found that the villains had tried to flee to France. But fate was quicker than justice. Their boat capsized in a storm near the channel, and both men were drowned. Later we learned the full truth. Paul Cratides had been the guardian of his sister Sophia, who had fallen under the influence of the handsome but wicked Sir Harold Latimer. When her brother tried to stop the marriage, Latimer and his accomplice seized him, hoping to force him to sign papers giving them her money. Sophia escaped and brought the police too late to save him. Mr. Melas recovered, though he bore the marks of that terrible night for weeks. As for Mycroft, he never left his club again, but he smiled when we visited him. "You see, Sherlock," he said, "I can still send you interesting work now and then." Holmes laughed. "You certainly can, my dear brother. But next time try to choose a case that doesn't end with murder and suffocation." Mycroft merely raised an eyebrow. I cannot promise that. The world is a dangerous place, even for interpreters. That night, as we rode back to Baker Street through the quiet streets, Holmes said softly, "It is strange, Watson, how a single word, a translation, can decide a man's life. But thanks to Mycroft, at least some truth was spoken before the end." And with that, he fell silent, the lamplight glinting on his sharp, thoughtful face as London rolled past in the fog.